Hello, everybody, and welcome back for the Saturday edition of Week 1 of the NFL preseason. I'm going to be your host, Sean, PSU Fans 2 Newsham. Joining me today, fresh off of a wedding season event last night, we have Chris Gimino. Chris, how's it going today?
Feeling great. Always a win when you drink and you feel great the next morning. And I got to wake up and start doing preseason NFL, my absolute favorite sport here in the DFS universe. And I'm already having fun watching the games that started earlier today. Going to be excited to talk about the ones coming up here at 7.
Yeah, I was not expecting to see you in the discussions at 7 a.m., but you were fresh and ready to go. So we're going to run through the slate for you guys tonight. We're going to go game by game. At the end, I will try to give you guys a little bit of a positional breakdown as well. For those of you guys who tuned in yesterday, you got some of the keys and some tips for the preseason. Chris, how do you feel the preseason has gone thus far, and how do you expect it to continue into tonight?
I feel pretty happy that it seems to be going the way that you might expect in terms of the way coaches are going about their business, not getting a ton of surprises. Information flow is really good. And generally speaking, the guys that we think are going to do something are usually doing something. There's obviously some exceptions like your Pierre Strongs and things of this nature, but there is definitely a lot to like about what's happened so far. And I'm thinking we're going to love what's going to happen tonight.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. We've seen some shallow positions be shallow and they actually get used. And we've seen most of the people that we expect not really to play, not really playing. So I would agree so far that's gone pretty much as expected. All right, guys, we're going to jump into the slate tonight. First game that we have going here is Seattle at Pittsburgh. So looking at the Seahawks, again, tonight's going to be a little bit different than last night. Last night, we had a lot of issues at tight end. We'll talk about tight end situation on DraftKings a little bit later. But tight end is pretty cleared up on DraftKings. The receivers are a bit small tonight. So first thoughts for me looking at Seattle. When we're looking at the quarterback situation, they're kind of battling to see who's going to be in at week 1 between Geno Smith and Drew Lock. So I expect both quarterbacks to play. Then Easton will come in, probably get at least a quarter and a half, if not the full second half. Looking through the running backs, again, it's not really a shallow backfield. We expect Kenneth Walker to play a bit tonight. And you're looking through it, you have 5 different running backs who are going to play. So we're just going to have spots that are better than this. But we saw yesterday, Jerome Ford absolutely went nuts in a situation that was similar to this. So you can always look at guys like DJ Dallas, Darwin Thompson, if you want to go a little bit more down the list. Chris, what's your thoughts on Seattle and mainly the receiving core that they have going into this game?
Yeah. First of all, like you said, quarterbacks, you're pretty much not going to be looking at these guys tonight. And the running backs is one of these situations in preseason where, sure, you can maybe rely on some kind of efficiency from a deeper group, but usually you want to try to target where the snaps are consolidated. That's not what we see here with Seattle. At their wide receiver position, the opposite is true. We are seeing an absolute boatload of receivers who are eligible to play. Don't really think we're going to see too much from anyone who's actually any good here in this particular receiving group. So you got maybe from 6 through 13 there that are probably going to eat the majority of the snaps in the second half and probably some of the first half. Nobody stands out in terms of playing time and opportunity, and that immediately makes me dislike this group, despite some pretty good athletes that are hanging out there. I think Bo Melton, Derek Young are certainly guys that if they had a consolidated opportunity, you'd like better, but I'm just not seeing the consolidated opportunity here.
Yep, I would agree. Looking at the tight ends on FanDuel, I don't expect much out of Font and Will Dissly. Colby Parkinson and Cade Brewer, I think, are at least options in the tight end department over on FanDuel tonight. So if you're looking at that, I think that there's some validity there. Moving over to the defenses, we are going to see them against Pittsburgh tonight. I'm expecting Kenny Pickett to get a significant amount of time for Pittsburgh. He's been struggling supposedly in camp a little bit, so that could be an opening. What's your thoughts on Pittsburgh with the quarterback situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's generally how we're looking at what kind of defenses we want to target in preseason DFS is, how likely is the quarterback to make a mistake? How weak is the offense they're going to be playing against? Because, naturally, we don't really have a good read on how good the defensive players are going to be in any given game. As far as the Seahawks are concerned, they're somewhere in the middle of the pack for me. I don't think that I'm going to be using them as my highest owned defense by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't really plan to X anybody out of the defenses for now. I have a list of maybe 8 that I'm probably going to use most of my exposure on. They're in that list.
For sure. Looking at the running backs, so we're not expecting Najee Harris or Benny Snell to play, with Durant and McNichols also likely unavailable. That knocks you down to 3 with Anthony McFarland, Jalen Warren, and Master Teague. Pittsburgh probably should know at this point what they're going to have with Anthony McFarland, so I'm not really expecting tons out of him. I think we're going to see a lot more of the running back carries go to Jalen Warren and Master Teague. Master Teague is a big power back that is not the most fleet of foot, so I prefer Jalen Warren of the backs. However, I think both are options, and if you want to throw in an Anthony McFarland who does have big play capability, you totally can. Looking at the receiving core, we've had George Pickens raved about during camp. And for those unfamiliar with the collegiate game, Pickens was a massive talent at Georgia. He lost a season due to injury effectively. He also had some attitude issues as well. But there's been discussions about him being used in the preseason and discussed whether or not he'd play, and they want them to carry what he's done in practice into the preseason. I know you were talking a little bit about Calvin Austin III before the show. So what's your thoughts on Calvin?
A really good athlete, and he's been given the opportunity in Steelers camp to see a lot of repetitions with the groups that are going to play in real games this season. So, they've had injuries they've been dealing with. So he's been rotating in with a bunch of guys, around camp. And I do think that they're impressed with what they're seeing here. 4.32 40-yard dash with just a real speedster comparable to Marquise Brown on Player Profiler. Just somebody that I would expect in a game like this would be getting quite a few touches, quite a few opportunities to run routes out there. And, maybe he'll come through, maybe he won't. But at the same time, I'm not really worried about that. I'm just worried about how big his opportunity is going to be to get those productive numbers in preseason. And I do think that he'll be among the group that plays the most in this game.
Yeah, and for those that aren't familiar with Calvin Austin, he was a massive volume guy in college at Memphis. At the end of his career there, he would just get absolutely fed the ball, has deep play potential, like Chris said, decent athlete as well. So I definitely like Calvin Austin a bit. Looking at the tight ends, for me, Jay Sternberger is probably the best tight end on the slate on FanDuel due to the fact that he has caught balls. His collegiate career, he was good at catching the ball. He has some experience in the preseason catching the ball. I don't expect tons out of Kevin Rader, and Connor Hayward is a converted running back, so he could be utilized here some extent as well. So with the fact that we don't expect to see Freiermuth or Gentry, I think there's some validity there. Any other thoughts on the tight end position here for Pittsburgh?
Absolutely not. I mean, for the most part, I'm playing most of my action on DraftKings, and we'll talk a little bit later about why I'm not even thinking about tight end tonight. It's really one of the most bizarre things I've seen in quite some time as far as position eligibility is concerned. But I will say nothing here on the tight end, nothing too much here on the defense. I mean, targeting Drew Lock and Geno Smith is absolutely fine, regardless of the situation.
For sure. All right, next game we have is Miami-Tampa Bay. We are expecting no action from Tua. We haven't marked off yet that he's out because we haven't got confirmation of that, but we're expecting that. We don't expect Teddy Bridgewater to play really either that much. So that leaves third quarterback Skylar Thompson. For those of you guys unfamiliar with Skylar Thompson, he has a very poor arm. It's not very strong, not very accurate. He was a quarterback in the Kansas State system that ran the ball more frequently. He does have the ability to run. However, he doesn't always run either. Like, I've seen this guy miss guys that are wide open by 10 yards, like where he just isn't close to them at all. So don't expect to be the most efficient with him, but he does have some mobility issue. What is your thoughts here, taking a look at the running back spot here?
Well, look, even with a couple of guys that you're probably going to cross off the list for sure, Emmons and Mostert, I just don't think you're going to see. And honestly, I'm not even sure we're going to see a lot of Michelle and Gaskin. They've been conducting joint practices this week. And anytime you see a team that's conducting joint practices, you should be thinking this is where the team's going to be using that time to evaluate the starting groups against actual opponents. And it's the same thing that you get out of a real game, except for you get it in a controlled environment. So then in the actual game, you'll actually see more of the reserves playing deeper into the game. So obviously, like guys like Dokes, there's Zaquandre Wright to be out there quite a bit in this game. Maybe you'll see Myles Gaskin and Ahmed as well, but still too many names for my comfort here, especially since some of the other situations are more condensed and I like the players better. So for me, I'm not really going to be taking a look here.
For sure. Looking at the receiving position, I know you have some different thoughts here. It really depends how fluid their depth chart is. We have a lot of guys here that are established vets that they sort of know what they're getting with. How do you think they're going to break down the receiving spot here for Miami tonight?
Probably start the game if Wilson gets in the game, he would be the highest ranked player I think we'll see. And then something like Preston Williams and Lynn Bowden or Trent Sherfield to start the game. And then as you get into the second quarter, I would expect guys like Cray Kraft, Erica Azukanama, and Braylon Sanders to get in the game more. So it depends how much that first group plays, how much I would like that second group. And it's not really at the top of my list right now, but I do think getting towards the bottom of that depth chart is where I would start to take my shots if I really didn't think Teddy Bridgewater is going to play a ton in this game.
Definitely. Looking at the tight ends, not much that I see here. You're looking at a bunch of guys that are not great pass catchers. So not looking at anything there. Looking at the defense on the other side of things for Tampa Bay, if they get a significant amount of time against Skylar Thompson, that is a fantastic defense on the night, just to note that. Looking at the Tampa Bay quarterback situation, I know you like Kyle Trask a little bit more than me. I think they're going to run 3 quarterbacks, so I think we're limited to the amount that Trask could play. So what is your thoughts here with the running or the quarterbacks?
Yeah, Ryan Griffin's been around for a while, so I think that's really the decision point here is if you think Gabbert is going to play a quarter or less, or even if he plays, in between 1 and 1.5, like we have marked down here, you're still going to get a really good chunk of run for Kyle Trask, and they do need to evaluate him. They do have to make decisions on the player very soon. You didn't really get a super, super great quality look last season. There was a game that he entered that was just a total disaster where they were playing all reserves. I don't think that Ryan Griffin's going to play more than a couple of series if he plays here. That was actually expressed by Greg Auman, one of their beat writers as well. So I do like Trask as a deeper GPP option, but I do want to offer up that in my entire pool of quarterbacks, I'm just not looking to get to Kyle Trask all that often. It's not that good of a play.
Yep, I agree. And that's my thoughts on it as well. The running backs. So the running back situation for me tonight is weird. I'm not exactly sure what to expect. I don't expect Leonard Fournette. That much I would say is accurate. After that, you have Vaughn Bernard and Kenyon Barner, who are all long-term veterans who have been around the league for a significant amount. However, I've seen different reports seeing that Rachaad White is effectively like number 2 on the depth chart. So if he's number 2 on the depth chart, I wouldn't expect tons of White either. So I think there is some volume here at running back to be had. My guess would be White is the best option because he's probably the most explosive of this group as it is anyways. And there's a possibility that White could just take off and have a huge game. So I guess I would definitely consider Rachaad White a little bit. But other than that, probably wouldn't go with many of the other guys. But there is volume to be had here with only 4 backs. Looking at the receiving options, there's just so many. I find it hard to believe any of the top 4 are going to play. So all of a sudden you're down a bit more through the depth chart. But then you have like Jalen Darden, Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller. These guys have been established guys for Tampa Bay. The one guy I will mention is Jarrett Stearns. For those unfamiliar with him, he absolutely lit up college football, was a just monster from the volume perspective. And he's someone to definitely consider as well. Do you have any thoughts on the receiving core here?
Yeah, I mean, the same with the running back group, right? Like, I think pretty much Keyshawn Vaughn and Rachaad White are in line to do a pretty good amount of work for them. But I do think they'll probably focus on the passing game anyway. And you're looking at guys like Darden as a player who needs to get additional experience in this offense. They're competing basically for that last couple of spots here on the roster. With Russell Gage getting hurt, it's more imperative that they make the right call in this regard. So Darden's a guy I've got my eye on. I think he's the best player amongst the group. I think he's the one that's most I would say most capable of handling the NFL workload in the season and actually getting open versus real live bullets. So Darden's the guy that I'm looking to capitalize on here if I take any of these Tampa Bay receivers.
For sure. Looking at the tight end position, the one guy I would mention is Cade Otton. He was able to catch the balls at Washington. I'm not super excited about it, so I'm really not looking to go to any of the tight ends per se. Moving on to the next game of the night, we have New Orleans at Houston. We're going to do this one in reverse order so that we can get out of the way the tight end elephant in the room. For some reason tonight, Jeff Driscoll is listed as a tight end on DraftKings. I'm hitting the lock button. I think anything below 100% is arguably bad. People are going to be cute, but I would say that this is not a spot to get cute. Driscoll's probably the best quarterback on the slate, if not top 3. So for me, it's just Driscoll lock in at tight end and call it a day. So I'm not even looking at any tight ends. Are you approaching it the same way?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he was technically a tight end last year, but that was sort of a conversion effort that didn't go the way that they had hoped. But the good news is they think he's athletic enough to actually play tight end, which means he can run. So, I mean, if this guy was playing a quarter, I'd probably be interested at maybe even locking him in. And he's playing pretty good chunk of the game here. It's just like not even worth talking about it. Like you play Jeff Driscoll, you hit the lock button, and then if you don't do that, I laugh at you.
Definitely. I would totally agree. Looking at the running backs, I know you were talking a little bit about Dameon Pierce before we hopped on. So why don't you talk about the running back situation here?
Yeah, so this is one of the situations where the hype has spun so far out of control on Dameon Pierce that it's actually clouding my judgment and creating bias. So here's what I think. I do think that the player, under normal circumstances, this would be the perfect opportunity to get him out there for a really good number of snaps. Like, Dare Ogunbowale and Royce Freeman are players that they absolutely know who they are. They certainly know who Rex Burkhead is. He's been around for so long. And Marlon Mack is coming off of seasons where he's been injured. So how much actual run do you want to put on his body this early in the process? You do want to get him out there and get hit probably, but Pierce is by far the player who profiles as the guy who should get the most work for this team. Of course, we do know that he's been excelling at camp, and they are probably expecting him to be a part of this team in the regular rotation. So that becomes a problem. Does he qualify more in this Davis Mills category where he's going to come out after a quarter, or is he a rookie type that they're going to run, closer to the end of the half? I think that's a small but important difference and distinction to make. Every opportunity counts, and Pierce would certainly be a good play towards the larger half of that run.
Yeah, looking at the receivers, so we think that we're going to see very little of Cooks, Collins, even Conley and Dorsett. Then you factor in Drew Estrada, Mechie, Chester Rogers, all are unexpected to play. When you get past that, you're really looking at very few amount of people with Chris Moore, BB, Jalen Camp, Connor Weddington. So I think that this is a very narrowed receiving core tonight. And this is definitely one of the spots you want to look at receiver. Are there anyone that stands out for you within this group that you like more than the others?
Yeah, so there's a group like right after the first group that's going to play that I think I like. I think that group probably does exit with Mills somewhere close to the beginning of the second quarter. And I do think you're going to see Jalen Camp, Connor Weddington, and Johnny Johnson play a pretty good amount of this game. There's just simply no reason for them to be using, Conley, Dorsett, Moore, and to a lesser extent, BB for huge chunks of this game. And those are the guys that I think need the most developmental work. So I do expect the Texans to take advantage of this opportunity to do that. And I think, as far as Camp and Weddington are concerned, those are my two favorite guys.
Yeah. Tight ends, I'm just going to skip it. It's not a great spot. I don't think any of those guys are worth really looking at, even on the FanDuel perspective. So we'll just move on to that of New Orleans in this game. So looking at New Orleans here, we're going to have a situation where I think Ian Book gets a majority of the run at quarterback. We know Jameis isn't going to play. They just signed Costello. So we can expect like a sort of back-end run for Costello. But Andy Dalton's been around the league forever. They don't need to see Andy Dalton. So I'm expecting 2 to 3 quarters at least of Ian Book here. Looking at the running back situation, so we're expecting Kamara, Ingram, and Jones not really to play much. Guy I marked off was Abram Smith. This is a guy that's a really power runner at Baylor and does have some potential to take one to the house from deep as well. Like he had power and speed combo at Baylor. Is there any other running backs here that interest you at all? And then what about the receivers as well?
No, I mean, if you think you can make a case for Xigbo, I think, but I mean, I think you got the guy in Abram Smith as the most likely producer there. Wide receiver position, totally different story. A little bit extended in terms of the number of guys we could see tonight. But if you do think that Callaway, Smith, Hardy, and to a lesser extent Baker come out of this game pretty early and run most of their time with Ian Book, with the guys behind them, Winston, Merritt, White, Dixon, and Shaheed, those are the guys I think you want to pick from. Kirk Merritt, I've been waiting to do something forever in preseason. Maybe this will be the year.
Yeah, so for me, it's a little bit of a situation where the receiving crew is probably a little bit too deep. These guys probably, you're looking at like 7 or 8 guys at least. I do think if we hear news that is possible that Callaway and Traquan Smith sit, then I think you could look at that Baker or that Merritt White type of area on the depth chart. So definitely something to note. Tight ends, way too deep, not worth considering, I don't think, at all here. Talk about the defense in this game. I think both defenses, again, are options. We should see a lot of Ian Book on this side, Driscoll on the other. Are they the worst quarterback options on the slate? No, you definitely can find probably better people to pick on, but definitely someone to look at. All right, moving on to the Dallas Cowboys game. So the quarterback situation is pretty clear from what we're seeing. We're going to get Cooper Rush. We're going to get Ben DiNucci. We're probably going to get a half from each. That's at least enough to put them into discussions and probably in your player pool, but nothing is really exciting about that. Moving on to the running back situation, why don't you talk to us about Aaron Schlampkin and the running backs here for the Cowboys?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a spot that you like because of the consolidated opportunity here, right? I think last year this was the same exact spot. We loved Daddle. Daddle did incredible stuff for preseason play. I think this year, especially since he's just coming off of COVID, like maybe we'll look at Davis and Pumpkin or whatever his name is. But this dude, they're low end. I think what is he from Harvard, right? Like this is as low end as it gets as far as the undrafted free agents are concerned. They're basically just eating snaps at this point in time. Neither one of these guys is really going to make the roster. I do think that there is technically a competition for RB3, but it's all but Dowdles to lose. So in my estimation, you're just going to see Davis and Schlampkin run the entire game here, and they need a bunch of snaps. And I think that's why you like him a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for those unfamiliar with Malik Davis was a really good receiving threat at Florida. So I definitely like the fact that he can be involved in the receiving game. And then Shampoo, this guy is going to get touches. It's going to be pretty hard for him not to get touches in this game. I don't know how much we see of Rico Dowdle, as you talked about. If we don't see much of him, those guys are the best running backs on the slate by far. I think they probably are regardless. Moving on to the receiving core. So it's a little bit deep for me. I have marked some people down like Noah Brown, Semi Fehoko. These are guys that have produced in the preseason before, and they definitely have the possibility to do it again. However, the issue for me is I'm a little bit concerned by the amount of guys that are here and whether or not we could get production from them. Do you like any of the receivers, or does anyone stand out here for you?
No, I don't think we're going to get a ton of snaps from anybody. Even a guy like Turpin coming from the USFL, he's only this high on my personal depth chart here because of his return skills and the fact that he's competing for a position on the team based solely on that and the fact that they're thin and injured, quite frankly. I don't think that they really have intentions of using him in the regular season in any sort of official offensive capacity. So guys like Fehoko and Vasher would be better options if I liked anyone, but I really don't.
Definitely. Looking at the tight end group, not much I'm seeing here at the tight ends. I probably wouldn't really touch many. I will say Peyton Hendershot was a good ball catcher at Indiana. So if you do want to take a deep tight end option, which on FanDuel, you definitely have to get creative in tight end situation, he's someone you could probably include in your player pool. All right, moving over to that of the Denver Broncos. So as of right now, we're not expecting Russell Wilson or any of the starters really to play. We really were high on some of the running backs, but that has changed a little bit, which we'll talk about in a second here. But what's your thoughts on the quarterback situation with Russell Wilson, Josh Johnson, and Rippon, and how to sort of approach that?
There's a couple of guys on other teams that are getting more consolidated work that really takes Josh Johnson out of the running for me. I mean, he's a guy who otherwise, if he was playing a half with his ability, I mean, he's played well. I think he had a huge game in the regular season last year. I think it was for the Jets. He can certainly get it done for fantasy in this setting. Has done it before. Done it in multiple football leagues, quite frankly. I think he was an XFL guy too. So this is a situation where if Josh Johnson was going to play a half, it would be mildly interesting, but there's just some better plays elsewhere that's going to keep me off him right now.
For sure. Looking at the running back, so we really liked Mike Boone and Max Borghi coming into the weekend or later in the week. However, they did sign Stevie Scott and Jaquan Hardy really, really late in the week. So they do have some bodies. I think those guys will just mop up the back end. I don't know how much Mike Boone will play. There is a possibility that they know what they have in Boone and they would sort of him a little bit. The guy I really like at running back is Max Borghi. For those unfamiliar with him, he had a 86 catch sophomore season at Washington State. His later years, his junior year, he had an injury, and then senior year, their coaching changed, and it was just their team was a disaster, and they just rotated, and it was awful. But Borghi's a guy that can really catch the ball out of the backfield, so I really like Borghi there for the running back. Moving on to the receivers, again, it's a little bit less thin than I guess you would think. There are some people that we don't really expect much to play for. What are some of the receivers you like in this spot?
So Seth Williams is a big athlete who, if given the right opportunity, could produce, at least in theory, with his skill set. He's more of a closer match to the Cortland Sutton of this team than say like a Kendall Hinton who would be playing one of the other positions, and I think they'll probably play at the same time together in this game. You're looking to try to get some production early with Josh Johnson if you're going with Williams and possibly looking to pair with somebody. But again, I'm not going heavily on Johnson. I'm really more focused on Williams. He's definitely somebody I'm going to have a lot of, hoping to catch one of those a touchdown here early in the game. Nobody else on this depth chart is really that appealing to me. I don't think they're particularly shallow in terms of their opportunity here. So I'm really just focused more on that early, possibly high efficiency opportunity for Williams.
Yeah, definitely. And again, look at the tight ends. Really not much there. There's not much I would touch at the tight end spot. I would look elsewhere realistically for tight end. All right. Heading into the last game, we have the LA Rams versus the LA Chargers. We will start here with the Rams. So at quarterback, I love Bryce Perkins. I was a guy that was all in on Bryce Perkins last preseason. The thing is I do think there's a little bit more murkiness with his situation. But with the elbow situation going on with Stafford, he definitely will not play. And I'm not sure if they use Wolford very much in the event Stafford is not ready to go at the start of the preseason. So Perkins is going to probably get at least a half, and he is easily the most mobile quarterback on the slate if he does get a half. I do think Perez will get mop up at the end, but Perkins definitely has some upside in this game. If for whatever reason we get news that Wolford's out, I would like Perkins even more than I already do. So looking at the running backs here, what's your thoughts with this backfield? Because I do see some people with some talent here.
So Jake Funk is definitely someone I've got my eye on right now. He's not one of my favorite plays right now because there's some other good plays elsewhere. But this is a situation with the Rams where they do not play. They're anyone who's going to have any chance of being like for sure in real games other than a select handful. And I think Jake Funk qualifies there. Kyron Williams did get activated. So, I mean, it does muddy the waters here. I wish he was more clearly out or more clearly limited because Funk would be someone that would be in line for a good amount of work here. Other than that, with all the other bodies on this team, I just can't really get excited about it. I think that it'll end up being, too spread thin for anyone to really break this slate without an absolutely incredible efficiency run.
For sure. Moving on to the receiver. So I do think that this is one of the more thin spots. Especially with a lot of guys that are out in the middle tier as well, with Harris out, Powell out, Warren Jackson just got back. The guys I really like here it depends how much Tutu Atwell gets in terms of volume here. If Tutu Atwell is going to play like a legitimate amount, I love Tutu Atwell because he can absolutely just take a top off of the defense and put up a major result. I know you were talking about Lance McCutcheon before the show. So what did you find on McCutcheon that interests you?
Well, the first thing that interests me is the fact that Tutu Atwell has been talked up so much in the press that he'll probably garner the ownership, and I don't think anyone even knows who Lance McCutcheon is. So this is a situation where I think, regardless, the playing time would be at best similar between those two players, and I actually think McCutcheon stands to play a lot more. I was just digging around, looking at what some of the beat writers were saying, and they were saying he's been standing out lately in camp. He's certainly somebody who, not someone who's caught the eye of the draft process, not someone who's been, tremendously touted as a player who could make it in this league. But in preseason play, I don't care. As long as you're going to be on the field and have an opportunity to get those coveted opportunities, it's going to be McCutcheon for me because I do think that he has a chance to play, well over a quarter and with upside to a lot more than that.
Yeah. Looking at tight end, I do think Bryson Hopkins and guys like maybe Jared Pinkney are deep dart throws at tight end. Again, when I'm talking a tight end tonight, it is super thin on FanDuel. Your DraftKings, you're sorted. You don't have to worry about it at all on DraftKings. FanDuel, it's really, really dicey, especially after like Sternberger. I don't see much there. All right, moving over to that of the Chargers, we see a quarterback situation that looks pretty familiar. Do you see anything at quarterback here that would make you interested at all?
No, I mean, absolutely not.
Nice and easy.
Period.
I will actually probably agree with the running backs being pretty much the same. I don't expect Eckler and then Spiller, Kelly, Roundtree, Letty, Gabe Marks. Like there's a lot of guys here that can get some volume, but it's just not overall that pretty. So I'm not super interested here in the running backs department either. Is there anyone that you like at all?
I mean, I love Isaiah Spiller's talent. I wish this was a situation that worked out better for him to have consolidation of workload, but they are working through Kelly and Roundtree to try to figure out what they're going to do there at that spot. So I expect they'll all probably touch the ball a little bit. And then by the time they're out of the game and onto the jabronis, nothing's going to matter for fantasy.
Yep, I tend to agree. Looking into the receiving position, what is your thoughts with the receivers? Because I think this is probably one of the most thin receiving cores we have on the day.
Well, they all stink, first of all, right? Especially Sage Surratt. But I mean, there's no question in my mind that if we're not expecting to see, I think Staley came out and said basically, if we know who you are, and if not only that, if we think that we know who you are, we're not going to play you in the preseason. We only need to play players that we need to evaluate. So that makes me skeptical of Jalen Guyton and DeAndre Carter as well. If they're not explicitly ruled out, I still think that those are guys that they probably know enough about based on their NFL careers and their time with the team that they won't be using them heavily in preseason. Carter less so than Guyton. That points to Joe Reed, Michael Bandy, Maurice French, and Trevor Bradford as the guys that I would expect to be seeing for almost the entire game. If those guys above aren't going to play, and that's a huge opportunity. We really like to see that in preseason DFS. Problem is, we don't know if any of these guys are any good, who's going to get the most targets. So I'm just going to rely on Reed, Bandy, and French in sort of a rotation as the way I'm going to approach this.
Definitely. Looking at the tight ends are thin. However, these are not pass-catching guys. I looked through their guys, the list and the college stats. None of these guys are really going to be pass-catching options. So I would probably steer clear from that way. All right, we're going to give you guys a quick rundown on the position by position on the slate. So I'll start with quarterback. For B, Driscoll and Perkins are probably the top two on the slate. Obviously, Driscoll's a tight end on DraftKings, but on FanDuel, those are probably the top two. And then I probably like Ian Book, Danucci, Rush, somewhere in that range. Is there anyone that you like more or less within that group, or someone not in that group you want to include?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be pretty reliant on Ian Book tonight, as well as Bryce Perkins. If I can stomach the idea that Perez and Wolford aren't going to play, I mean, I've got my eye open on that. Kyle Trask would be the only guy that would add in on DraftKings there that I might consider.
Definitely. All right, into the running back spot. What do you like at running back here tonight?
So for me, I love Jaylen Warren. I think, the Dallas guys are obviously in position to get a lot of run. I just do think that, he's going to be on the field for quite a bit tonight. He's got a chance. The only problem I have with him is that, the Steelers offensive line stinks with their best guys, and I'm not really sure we're going to see their best guys tonight. So that is somewhat of a concern for Warren. But Borghi of Denver is a guy that I really think has a chance here tonight. And I do think Rashad White, Anthony McFarland, Master Teague, and Abram Smith are also some guys I'm looking at here for running back this evening.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely the Dallas guys are the top guys. I like them a lot. Chris talked about most of the guys that I would have mentioned as well. The deep end dart throw that I like is Abram Smith. I think Abram Smith could have a role tonight, have an opportunity. So that's who I would go with at running back. Receiver, it's bleak out there. I think for me, the people that I like most are probably in the back end game. You're going to have George Pickens and you're going to have Tutu Atwell, and I think you're going to have Preston Williams and guys like that, and they're really strong plays. But the most open depth chart to me is the last game of the night, the Chargers versus Rams. The receivers on those teams are probably the guys that interest me a lot more than some of the other receivers on the slate. And we wrote up only a few receivers, and just to give you guys a view on that, I really thought it was a really thin position. I didn't really see any receivers I really love. Usually I find guys I like, even if it's a deeper position. Like last night, I really liked Danny Gray, even though that wasn't a super open position. What's your thoughts at receiver? Anyone that you like more than we've discussed?
I mean, I think McCutcheon's a guy that I definitely mentioned is that I like more than we probably have him in the projections right now. I think I like Calvin Austin better right now too. I think everyone's going to play George Pickens. I don't think Austin's going to be low owned or anything, but I do think between the two Steelers, I would probably rather take the lower owned guy, and I do think that'll be Calvin Austin. And then I'm going to try to roll the dice on some of these thin situations: Houston, Los Angeles Rams, Los Angeles Chargers, and I'm going to try to hit the nuts, so to speak, on some complete unknown guy. I mean, for the majority of people out there, and really try to do so at lower ownership.
Yeah, I kept my wide receiving group really open today. I kept it super open, whereas I made other positions a little bit more consolidated compared to my receivers than I normally would. Moving over to tight end, we've talked about it. DraftKings, very clear option. We don't need to go over it again. FanDuel, for me, the only guy I really like is Sternberger. Outside of Sternberger, there's a lot of people that are okay. when I say okay, I mean they're not okay. It's just like you have to play someone, so like they're options. Is there anyone that you like at tight end that we haven't mentioned for FanDuel?
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. Since I'm not running on FanDuel tonight, I've let you do all the talking and thinking on tight end tonight. I think you hit the guys that we should be talking about anyway. It's Driscoll for me on DraftKings, and we can move right along to the core plays that we have written up on FanDuel.
For sure. And then defenses, I don't really want to go into the defenses too much. We've talked about them as we've gone through here, so you guys can have an idea of like what defenses are. But basically what you're looking for with the defense is looking at what quarterbacks are going up against. The more time they get against back-end guys, the better. If that back-end guy is a mobile guy, usually the better as well because he's going to run into sacks. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Chris, is there anything else that you want to add here before we call it a day?
No, good luck out there. Hopefully we can get some good action to go our way tonight in some of these unknown spots like these receiver groups, and I'm really excited to see how it falls.
For sure. All right, everyone, we will not have a show tomorrow. We will have top plays, and we'll have the depth charts and projections on Lineup HQ and on the site as well, but there will be no show tomorrow. We'll be back next week with some more shows and more preseason content. Good luck to everyone tonight. We will see you guys later.